Hello and welcome back to another video. My name is Mike Davies, and in today's tutorial I'll be showing you 10 non-destructive features available in GIMP right now. I'm using GIMP version 2.10.28, which is the latest version of GIMP at the time of this tutorial. Before I get into that, don't forget to check out my website at daviesmediadesign.com. As always, I have tons of video tutorials on here. You can get more by becoming a DMD Premium member, and I have tons of free software help articles, so definitely check that out. You can enroll in my GIMP 2.10 Masterclass from beginner to pro photo editing on Udemy, and you can get more by becoming a DMD Premium member, and I'll include a link to this as well as all the relevant links from this tutorial in the description of the video. So I know what you're asking yourself right now. Yes, GIMP does contain some non-destructive editing features. It is not reserved only for premium software such as Affinity Photo or Photoshop. GIMP does have non-destructive features as well. Let's dive into the 10 non-destructive features found in GIMP, starting with the non-destructive crop tool, which is a fairly new feature. I can access this feature by hitting Shift-C or by clicking the crop tool in the toolbox here. And you'll see here under the crop tool options, there is a box labeled delete cropped pixels. If I check this box, this will make the crop tool destructive, which was the old behavior. But if I leave it unchecked, that's going to turn this crop tool into a non-destructive crop tool. So now I can click and drag my crop tool. And once I'm ready, click inside it to crop. And you'll notice you still see the original layer boundary going outside of the canvas boundary. So if I hit the M key to grab the move tool, I can actually click and drag this and reposition the photo inside that crop area. I can also show all the pixels spilling outside the canvas by going to View, Show All. So here you can see the canvas boundary, and here are the original pixels from the image. So let me just turn that off here, View, Show All. And finally, if I want to restore this image, I can go to Image, Fit Canvas to Layers, and it doesn't matter what steps I did before that, it will still restore the image. So let me just demonstrate, Control Z. If I grab the paintbrush tool, draw some squiggles here, and then go to Image, Fit Canvas to Layers, it'll still return that image back to the regular size. So I'll hit Control Z to back up. So just to clarify, non-destructive means the changes you make are not going to be permanent. So in that case, when you're cropping pixels, the pixels are not permanently deleted. You can recover them at any time. Therefore, it is non-destructive to the original image. The next non-destructive feature I want to cover in this tutorial is the GEGL Filter feature. So GEGL Filters are a somewhat new concept that was introduced in GIMP 2.10. I guess that was a few years ago now, but with GEGL Filters, you can get a live preview on your canvas of the effects from the filter, so you don't have to apply the effects first in order to see them. So sticking with this image, for example, I can go to Filters, Distorts, Newsprint, and here we can play around with the settings, and we can see the full effect of this filter directly on our image. However, this is not going to permanently add this filter to the image just yet. And we can also do something like this, the split preview, where we can sort of move this around and see what's going on here. So this is just one example of a GEGL filter. So let me hit cancel. Another example is some of the GEGL filters that have on-canvas controls. So for example, the new vignette filter. So let me hop over to this composition here I created. This is a photo manipulation. And you'll see I already have a vignette on here. Let me just delete that and create a new layer. Keep it named vignette and click OK. So now if I go to Filters, Light and Shadow, Vignette, you'll see I have on-canvas controls here, and it's a GEGL filter, so I can turn the preview on and off. But this allows me to interact directly with the filter on top of our composition without actually doing damage to the composition. And also because we created a new vignette layer when we started this, if I click OK, you can see it applied that filter to its own layer, so that did not destroy the image or apply that directly to the image. So I'll just exit out of there. The third non-destructive feature found in GIMP is the sample merged option for the heal and clone tools. So I'll hop over here to this image and hold Control, zoom in. So let's say we wanted to get rid of some of the acne for the model here. We can use the heal or clone tools to do that, of course, but we don't have to use the heal and clone tools directly on the original image, which would be destructive. The non-destructive method is we can create a new layer here, and let's name this Skin Retouch, and click OK. So we have a blank transparent layer here. Now let's say I hit the H key or grab the heal tool here from my toolbox, which I can click and hold on this tool group and grab the healing tool. So if I come down here and check the option that says sample merged, what that's going to do is it's going to pull pixels from all layers in the composition. So that includes the layer right here, the image layer, and the layer we're on. Of course, there are no pixels from this layer, so we don't have to worry about it pulling pixels from that layer. But I'll hold Control, zoom in a bit. So let me increase the size of my brush. So if I hold Control and click, I can grab a source area from the image layer. And then I can paint here on the skin retouch layer, and you'll see it's going to help get rid of that acne. And in this case, it doesn't look great right now. But let's say I come over here and I hide this, you can see those pixels are not going to be on the original image, therefore that's non-destructive. And of course I can do a better job on this and spend more time, but for this tutorial, I'm just going to leave it at that. Non-destructive feature number 4 found in GIMP is going to be the history brush. This isn't actually called the history brush, that's what they call it in Photoshop. This is just a method in GIMP you can use to emulate that history brush. So to demonstrate this, I'll come back here over to my photo manipulation composition, and I'll come over here to my undo history tab. But this basically just gives us all of the changes we've performed here on our composition during our current session. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this composition, and I'll do that by hitting Control D. So you'll see we have all of our layers from our original composition. The only difference is the history here is going to be blank. So let's come back here over to the original photo manipulation composition. So let's say we wanted to go back in time and sort of fix one part of this. Maybe we don't want this rock to be a rock anymore for whatever reason. So let's back all the way up. And I'm just going to click on some random point in time here. Maybe we go all the way to right here. All right, so that's backing us way up here. Let me just hide this layer. So this was the original image. Let's say I just wanted to bring back this part right here from the original. So what I can do is come over here and let's change this to the clone tool. This will also work with the heal tool. And we'll come back to the tool options. And we're just going to make sure sample merged is checked for the clone tool, and also make sure that the alignment is set to registered. So I'm going to increase the size of my brush. And I'm just going to click on this bottom layer, Control click, and then if I come over here to the duplicate composition, now I can paint this back in using that undo history. And so now we have painted back in an earlier step, and this just pretty much allows us to bring in any element from any step in our workflow, or in other words, it just allows us to undo any step at any point during our workflow. As I said, this also works with the heal tool, so let's come back here. Hit the H key. As long as sample merge is turned on and registered is turned on, I'll hold Control and click, and we'll come back over here, and I'll just paint with the heal tool. And also, I'm just doing this right now directly on this layer here. I can also do this on another layer, a completely blank layer, and that's just another way to make this even more non-destructive. Just painting these pixels here on this blank layer. The 5th non-destructive feature that's found in GIMP right now is going to be the text tool. So the reason the text tool is non-destructive is you can type out your text, you can add some filters to it or effects, and you can come back and re-edit the text at any time. So to demonstrate this, I'll come over here to a new image, and now I'm going to grab my text tool. And with the settings the way they are, I'm just going to click on here, and with the caps lock key on, I'll type coffee. Control A to select the text, and I'll just quickly change this to white. So you'll see over here we have what's called the text layer. But if I were to add an effect to this, for example, if I go to Filters, Lighten Shadow, Long Shadow, and let's just make this decently long shadow, and click OK. You'll see by adding the effect to the text layer, it's discarded the text layer, and now this is just your standard layer or pixel layer. Well, the non-destructive feature here is that even though the text layer was discarded and the effect was added directly to that text layer, we can actually bring back the text layer very easily using the text tool. So making sure I'm still clicked on here, I'll come over here, grab the text tool, and if I click on this former text layer, you're going to get a little message here that says confirm text editing. And you'll see here it says the layer you selected is a text layer, but it has been modified using other tools. Editing the layer with the text tool will discard these modifications. You can edit the layer or create a new text layer from its text attributes. So if I click create new layer, it's just going to create a brand new text layer on top of this effects layer. Or if I click edit, it's just going to discard the effects. So let me hit create new layer first just to demonstrate. So here you'll see we now have a new text layer on top of our effects layer. So I can hide this, for example, and you can see now that effect is gone. And your little text editor box isn't going to pop up at first. Just click on a different tool and then come back to the text tool. So now you'll see we can do whatever we want to this. Let's say I want to change the font. Let's go with the America font. So now I've got a brand new font on here, Control A. Maybe we increase the size of it too. And so now obviously this old text effect no longer applies to our new text, but what we can do is just go to Filters, Light and Shadow, Long Shadow, and if you wanted to just use the exact same settings you had before, come over here to the presets and you'll see there's a little preset history. So you can click on that, and we didn't do that much to the original text, but there are plenty of cases where maybe you did perform a lot of steps here. So you can always use the presets to bring that back up and click OK. Non-destructive feature number 6 in GIMP is going to be layer masks. So many of you are already familiar with layer masks from using either GIMP or Photoshop or Affinity Photo. All those programs have layer masks. Layer masks are in themselves a non-destructive feature because they essentially allow you to erase any pixels from an image, including the background of the image, without actually affecting the original pixels of that image. So let me demonstrate. I'll just come over here to a new image, and let's say I wanted to quickly erase this background. What I can do is click on this layer and come over here and click on the little layer mask icon and go with white full opacity and click add. So now when I paint on a layer mask using, for example, the brush tool here, so let's say I paint black on here, you'll see here now it's going to erase the pixels in the background. And I do have an entire tutorial dedicated to how to erase a background, even if it is a complex background. But the reason layer masks are non-destructive is, let's say I screw the ear up here. I'll hit the X key to switch over to white. I can always paint that back in. Or if I wanted to just bring all the pixels back in general, I can right-click on here, go to Delete Layer Mask, and now the original image returns. So I do have a full tutorial on layers and layer masks if you want to learn more about that. Plus I also cover it in more depth inside of my GIMP Masterclass. So speaking of erasing pixels on an image, the next non-destructive feature in GIMP does have to do with the eraser tool. In fact, the next few have to do with the eraser tool. So let's come over here and grab the eraser tool from the toolbox. You can hit Shift E to grab it as well. And we're going to increase the size of this. So the eraser tool is going to just erase the pixels here from an image. If you don't have an alpha channel on here, it's just going to erase using the background color. Let me hit Control Z to back up. If I right click on the image layer and go to Add Alpha Channel, now when I erase the pixels, you'll see it's going to reveal the alpha channel, which is this gray checkerboard background. The issue with the eraser tool though is that it is destructive because you're erasing directly on the image, as you can see here. And this is the image thumbnail, of course. However, there is a workaround for this tool. So non-destructive feature number 7 is I can use the unerase mode in the eraser tool to bring back any pixels I've erased. All I have to do for that is hold the Alt key and you'll see a little minus sign, and all I have to do is paint this back in, and that's basically just undoing the erasing. The benefit of this is, of course, if I erase and then let's hit the T key to grab the text tool, and let's just type some random text, and then we say, okay, I don't want to have this erased here anymore. I can grab the eraser tool, hold the Alt key, and let's make sure I'm on the original layer. So holding the Alt key, you'll see even though I performed another action ahead of this, we can come back here and we can unerase that. Along these same lines, non-destructive feature number 8 for GIMP is going to have to do with transferring the alpha channel from the image to a layer mask. And you can do that really at any point in your composition or inside your workflow. So we'll click on this layer here. Once again, we're going to erase this. And then let's just create a new layer. And I'll name this painting, hit the enter key. We're going to grab the paintbrush tool, grab a random color, and just draw some squigglies. So let's say we do all this and we realize, you know what, I don't really want to have all this erased. I want to be able to transfer all this to a layer mask and therefore make it non-destructive. What I can do is come over here, click on the layer, and then I can come over here, click on the layer mask icon to add a layer mask, or you can also right click on here and go to add layer mask. That'll take you to the same little window here. And then you'll see here it says transfer layers alpha channel. So if I click that option and then come over here and click add, what that does is it takes the area that you erased, so this area right here, and it basically lifts it off the original image and just places it here on its own layer mask. So kind of retroactively adds a layer mask from your erasing. And now if I right click and go to disable layer mask, you'll see there is our original image. And I can always adjust the layer mask, paint on the layer mask, or right click, show layer mask, so I can view where the layer mask is actually painted on. I'm just going to right click, uncheck disable layer mask, right click, uncheck show layer mask. So yeah, I can basically do whatever I would do to a normal layer mask. So if I hit the X key, I can paint using white, bring some of these areas back in, whatever you want to do with the layer mask. Non-destructive feature number 9 is the Paths tool, as well as the Paths tab in GIMP. So there's actually other Premiere software that doesn't really have a Paths tab. I'm looking at Affinity Photo, although Affinity does have a path tool, and it does allow some customization with the paths that you draw. But GIMP does a slightly better job with paths, as well as making them more non-destructive. So let's come back to our photo manipulation composition, and I can come over here to the Paths tab. And these are some paths that I drew when I was creating this composition. So I created an outline of the subject, and I also outlined some parts of the rocks here. So these were drawn using the Paths tool here. So I can grab this using the B key or just right here in the toolbox. And the great thing about paths, and the reason they're non-destructive, is I can click on these with the Paths tool at any time, and I can always make adjustments to any of the nodes in the path. Or for example, I can come over here and choose move, and I can move this around. So let me hit Control Z to back up. I can also convert this to a selection area. So there's plenty of icons in here inside the Paths tab. So I can click on here, and you'll see now my path is a selection. And with selections, of course, you can do various things like fill them in with a color. You can use them on a layer mask. Really, there's tons of stuff you can do with this. So let me hit Control Shift A to deselect that, and also just click on the move tool to get rid of all those nodes. So let's come up here to the top path, and we're going to create a selection from that, and come over here to the layers panel. So right now I'm on this visible layer, and because I have that path that surrounds the main subject, I can hold Control zoom in. Let's say now that we have just the subject selected here, what I want to do is try to match the color temperature of the subject a little bit better with the background image here. Now I can do that by going to Colors, Color Temperature. And because we have an active selection area, this is only going to affect what's inside the selection area, so just the main subject there. And now I can click OK. Hit Control Shift A to deselect that, and let's come back to the Paths tab and just hide these. So now we've fixed the color temperature of this without affecting the rest of the image. And because these are stored over here, we can really access these at any time during our workflow. The 10th and final non-destructive feature found in GIMP that I'll cover for this tutorial is going to be the on-canvas gradient editor. So let's come back to the first image we were working on. Grab the layers tab here, click on the layers tab, and I'll grab the gradient tool. And what I can do is change this to whatever color I want. I'm just going to go with some random colors here. And maybe for this color, let's go with this yellow color. So with the gradient tool, I can click and drag this across my image. Of course, we're working directly on the image layer right now, which I don't totally recommend doing, but you can do it. So because we have the on-canvas gradient, we can make adjustments to this even after we've drawn it. So right here, you can see I can adjust this. This is going to be one of the endpoints here. There's another endpoint up top. I can also eject this and move it out of the way if I need to. But here's another endpoint. We can also adjust the midpoint here. We can click and add additional points known as stops, and we can edit the colors of these. And I can also come over here to the tool options for this, and I can change the layer mode or the blend mode for this. And I can also adjust the opacity, so I can make a bunch of adjustments to the gradient tool before applying it to the image. And I do have an entire tutorial dedicated to this tool, but let's just go with another example here. Let's change the location. This is set to radial right now. I can also change it to linear. So if I'm ready to apply this, I can hit the enter key and that will apply my gradient. Of course, this is directly on the image, which once again, I don't recommend doing, so I'll hit Control Z. You can always create a new layer, and this one's named gradient already. I'll click OK. We can draw the gradient here on this composition, the gradient layer. And let me just change the mode back to normal. And we can also increase the opacity. Make sure I click right here on the gradient handles and just hit the enter key. Now I can come over to this layer and adjust this. So the opacity, and then let's also change this to lighten only. So we get the same effect here, but the gradient is on a separate layer. So that's adding yet another non-destructive aspect to this gradient tool. All right, so that's it for 10 non-destructive features found in GIMP. Hopefully you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, don't forget to click the like button, subscribe to my channel, and click the bell icon to be notified each time I have a brand new tutorial. You can check out any of the links to my resources in the description of the video. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.